Well, good evening and welcome to Broken But Unbowed, the PJNet hashtag rally celebrating Governor Abbott's new book by that same title. And we're fortunate to have Governor Abbott on the phone right now. So let me bring him into, Governor, come on into my office and have a seat there. And while you're getting here, before we get started, I just want to thank you for your support. Not only of the Convention of States, but of PJNet, and we're just glad to have you here.
Well, thank you, Mark. Listen, this is an essential connection that we've made. For one, I enjoy doing hashtag PJNet whenever I tweet, and it's so important that we as a group be able to communicate together about the necessity of joining together to ensure that we restore the rule of law in our country.
Well, Governor, I don't want to spoil the book, but I must say you owe me a cup of coffee. When I read the account of you saying being in a wheelchair has an advantage to be at eye level with the jury, when you told the account of the disabled person that was on the other side with his cane, you owe me a keyboard. I spewed coffee all over mine.
Well, it's one of many stories that I've gathered during my process of overcoming the injury that put me in a wheelchair. That's
right. Well, Governor Abbott, as I read through the book, I must say I was under a little bit of stress because of this upcoming interview. But what I saw, and I was kind of reading between the lines, so let me kind of give you a take, and you tell me if I've kind of got it right or got it wrong. But in your championing the conservative cause, as Attorney General, when you took on and sued the federal government, I got the sense that some of them scored points and you bloodied their nose when other states piled on and joined you in that suit. Fair? Is that fair, or did I just make that up?
Well, here's the facts, and that is I hold a record that will never be broken, and that is I sued the Obama administration 31 times. Now, it's not because it's something I wanted to do, but it's something that I had to do in order to do everything I possibly could to protect our Constitution. Let me give you just two examples of the weightiness of what we're dealing with. One eventually led to a decision that came out the last week of the Supreme Court's decisions this month, and it was the one concerning the executive order by Barack Obama granting amnesty to millions of people in the country illegally. In my last month in office as Attorney General before I became Governor of Texas, I filed the lawsuit that led to that Supreme Court decision. The reason why I had to file that lawsuit is because the president was acting in a way completely contrary to the way the Constitution is designed. As you all know, in the Constitution, it's under Article 1, Section 1, that it gives the power to Congress and only to Congress the authority to write the laws in this country. Barack Obama recognized that because he himself said about 20 times he didn't have the authority to alter the immigration laws. And then, after the last round of elections, he went against the Constitution, he went against his own analysis, and he decided to rewrite the immigration laws of this nation, assuming to himself the legislative authority. So we sued to put a stop to it. But here's the danger point that dovetails with where we're going tonight. The danger point is the fact that at the Supreme Court, they could not decide the case because it was a 4-4 tie. And that means that the Fifth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals decision was upheld. That was in favor of saying that the president exceeded his authority and in favor of putting a halt to the president's executive order. Here's my point. We know there are 4 justices on the United States Supreme Court who agree that the president should have unfettered authority to rewrite laws in this country. We know if the country goes down the wrong path and we don't fill Scalia's seat with someone who's going to strictly apply the Constitution, then the country will and the Constitution will be turned on its head. This shows the urgency of the need for a convention of states. It's one of countless other examples I could give to you that was behind the necessity of me filing that lawsuit.
Well, Governor, one of the things that I took away, from the book, and again, maybe I'm reading between the lines, so help clarify. The first I've already mentioned, when other states pile on these lawsuits, that kind of adds weight to the scales. The other thing is you have done a great job championing these constitutional challenges and standing firm on the Constitution. However, the weakness that I see is we don't have enough Governor Abbotts. But when you get the other states involved, you had, it added to the power of your punch. I saw a connection. The Convention of States can do what one person, even if it's Governor Abbott or Attorney General Abbott, can't do, because now it's a grassroots movement.
Well, you are right. A couple of points. One is that in some of these lawsuits that we filed, we had more than half of the states suing their own federal government, seeking redress from our own government leaders. In Washington, D.C., the insiders up there, we had to seek redress from judges. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work. And, Mark, this is really the pivotal point, and that is, as the person who has sued the federal government more than 30 times, I can tell you, it takes more than lawsuits to fix what is broken in Washington, D.C. We need to understand that it does take the states. The insiders in Washington are not going to fix themselves. They're the ones who have sunk us $19 trillion into debt. It's the insiders in Washington, D.C. that have abandoned the 10th Amendment. Remember this. Some of my lawsuits asserted the 10th Amendment. Oftentimes when we see these runaway actions by federal government, people say, why don't you just assert the 10th Amendment? And there's a reality why we have run into that challenge, and I point this out in my book in some level of detail. And that's because in 1985, the United States Supreme Court said that they are no longer going to apply the 10th Amendment. They said for our 10th Amendment redress, we need to look to our elected U.S. senators and U.S. representatives, which of course is absurd. That's not what the founders intended. That's not what the Constitution says. But yet, that is the way the courts and our federal leaders have determined it. So that leads to the necessity of states combining together to do what the authors of the Constitution intended us to do, and that is to use Article 5. If they did not want us to use Article 5, if they did not want states to have the authority, they would not have written that into Article 5. So who here is wiser than James Madison and Alexander Hamilton? I say they knew exactly what they were talking about, and they wanted states to be able to assert the right to make amendments where necessary when the federal government has run out of control.
Well, and the other thing is your challenges in the court, even the Supreme Court, that's only one of the three branches. Article 5 allows us to get at the other branch.
And it's necessary because we have a president who's no longer abiding by the Constitution. And don't think that this is the only example, of course, because this has happened before Barack Obama and it will happen after him. But second is one of the key things about the Constitution and the key thing about Article 1 is the people gave up the power to run their lives a little bit by granting certain authority to the federal government to make laws governing their lives. And that power was given to and only to Congress for a specific reason. And that is they wanted to grant that power to someone that you could hire or fire based upon whether or not they make decisions that help you or hurt you. Now what Congress has done, they've violated the Constitution by giving all this authority to unelected, uncountable bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. Get this fact, and that is that Congress doesn't even vote on more than 90% of the laws, rules, and regulations that come out of Washington, D.C. So we have to get Congress back into the mold the Constitution was designed. We have to get the president back into the mold the Constitution was designed. And we have to have judges who apply the Constitution, not rewrite it.
Governor Abbott, your book is an inspiration in many ways, not only the factual material, but also many books just portray a problem. You portray a solution. And that inspires me, and it calls upon ordinary people like us to take charge of our own government. Let me shift gears a minute. You have overcome some enormous challenges personally, and the first part of your book goes into that. And I really look up to you for doing that. I'm a football coach, and I know what injuries can do, not only physically, but mentally, psychologically. But I also got to say, your wife has got to be one awesome woman.
Well, she is fabulous, and she's a key reason why I've been able to piece my life back together. For those on this phone call or those who are listening who may not know, what happened to me is I was out jogging when I was 26 years old. And when I was out running, a huge tree fell on me, and it crashed down into my back, fracturing my vertebrae and my spinal cord, leaving me immediately and forever paralyzed. And I've used a wheelchair ever since I was 26 years old. But in piecing my life back together after that, with the help of a wonderful wife, by the way, she and I will celebrate our 35th wedding anniversary in a month and a half. And with her, and certainly with my faith in God, it was after that I went on to be a judge, the Attorney General, and now the Governor of Texas. And that shows, Mark, the underlying point, and that is our lives are not defined by how we're challenged, instead by how we respond to the challenges we face. That's the principle that applies to this group, to our fellow citizens in the United States at this moment. And that is, we need to understand our country is challenged. We cannot allow our country and our future to be defined by the way we are currently challenged. Instead, it must be by the way that we collectively respond to those challenges.
Governor Abbott, I've always known you were a champion, but after reading your book, it's been amplified, and I must tell you, I am so glad you're on our side.
Well, this is a team and a team effort, but really that's the way the founders designed it. They understood the most important force in this country. And it's not the legislative branch, it's not the executive branch, it is not the judicial branch. It is the first three words of the United States Constitution, and that is, we the people. And they knew, the founders knew, that there would come a time when the people needed to have the power to reassert where the real authority in this country lies, and that is with the people. And that's precisely why we have Article 5, for us, the people, to be able to restore power where it belongs.
Governor, you have been very gracious. You've been very hospitable. With your time tonight, we thank you profusely, effusively, and from the bottom of our heart. And we just want you to know that we're not only glad you're on our team, we want you to know that we're behind you all the way.
Thank you so much, Mark. God bless.
All right, thank you.